So, hello and welcome to Sunday afternoon of the Sober Weekend. Today we are talking all about well-being and some of the changes that you might experience as you're changing your drinking, and some ways of supporting you to live well. And in the learning materials for today, we've got some stuff around dealing with stress and anxiety, about improving your sleep, and about improving your eating. But there are lots and lots of ways in which you can improve your well-being. Which is why I'm really, really thrilled to be joined by Katie from Little Challenges. Hi, Katie. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm so excited to be with you.
It's awesome. Katie, could you, I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping, and then I'll come to you with a question. So just to say, we've got the chat open in the side of the webinar. If you've got questions through this, I'm going to keep an eye on the questions. Katie and I are going to have a rolling conversation, but if there's stuff that you want to ask, do ask the question, and I will do my best to pass that on. So Katie, tell us a bit about you and Little Challenges.
Well, hi, I'm Katie. I live between Bristol and Gloucester, and I run a project called Little Challenges, which is a place to find simple, practical, evidence-based ideas that can help us to look after ourselves a bit better, essentially. And the reason why I do it is because for most of my life, I wasn't very good at looking after myself. And,
like so many people.
it
well
led
done
me
for
to
doing something about it.
and it led me into some kind of unfortunate situations. And then a few years ago, I got to a point where I thought, enough is enough. I really need to make a change now. But I didn't know how to go about it. So I started investigating ways that I could look after myself a bit better. And I found lots and lots of things that were helpful. So I started gathering them in one place, in the hope that maybe some of them might be helpful to other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of the things that you do now, there are lots of things, and we'll talk about other things that you do and ways in which people can connect with you. But one of the things which I love that you've done as one of your projects is your Adventures in Behaviour Change podcast.
Yes, so I thought one good way of finding out things that might be helpful for me personally, but also for others, was to talk to people who had expertise or experience that I didn't have. So I started interviewing behavioral scientists and authors and people with real life experience of significant behavior change to find out what they'd learned and what they could tell me about how I might be able to help myself and how other people might be able to help themselves too. And at the end of every episode, I get them to suggest a little challenge, which is something really, really small that might make a difference.
Yeah, and the last one, which I forget the last podcast that I listened to. It's the last one that you did.
It was Joshua Friedman from
Yes.
6 Seconds, which is the emotional intelligence
Yes.
organization.
Yeah, and the big thing which I took away from that was around how we talk about emotions and talking about big emotions rather than bad emotions. That was been my little kind of takeaway from that. It's been absolutely fantastic and so helpful. Oh, a couple of people suggesting the audio is quite low. I don't know that I can do anything about that my end. It may be just that you need to. I wonder whether you can adjust your mic, Katie, to.
I've turned it up a little bit. Is that any?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that maybe works.
Just me.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes, we're better. Okay, we're good. So Katie, one of the things which you've done, which I absolutely love, is this little pack of goodness, and I wonder if you could tell us about this, because I think it's just fabulous.
Okay, so in the process of gathering up good ideas, I noticed that when I'm not feeling great, and when I say not feeling great, what I'm talking about personally is that I had about 32 years of really increasingly severe challenges with my mental health, which started when I was 12, kind of went through my life as a student. When I was a young mum, I got postnatal depression. Eventually I was diagnosed with various things. And then 4 years ago, I had a massive breakdown. So I've had a lot of depression, anxiety of different kinds, and really significant mood swings and difficulty regulating my emotions. And one thing I noticed was that when I don't feel great, when I'm in a place where I'm not feeling at my most robust, it doesn't seem to matter how many good ideas I have about how to look after myself. I generally can't remember them. So in these days, my work revolves around collecting and sharing those good ideas. And
Mm-hmm.
yet, if I'm a bit overtired or I get a bit emotional or I've just had a wobbly day, I still can't remember the kind of common sense things that I
Mm-hmm.
might say to a friend if they came to me and said that they weren't in a good place.
Yeah.
So what I
And
started
go on. I interrupted you. Go on.
so what I started doing was I got myself a load of index cards and I started writing down the things that helped me most. And I drew silly little pictures on them. And I thought maybe when I need a prompt, I can look through the index cards and maybe they'll help me. And then within the community of people who are involved with Little Challenges, which is the project I run, I did a survey and I asked people what kinds of things help you when you don't feel at your best. And loads of answers came in. And I collected all of those and I collected the information that came from the people on my podcast. And I read loads of research and articles. And I started seeing patterns emerging. And I recognized that loads of the things that people were saying were helpful for me too.
Mm-hmm.
So I put them all on these cards and I thought I would look to see which of them had evidence backing them up. And I did a bit of research and I kind of condensed them down into 52 main ideas. So I thought it would be fun to turn them into a pack of playing cards. And the aim of the cards is that you look through them and you simply use them as a reminder tool to help you think of things that might help you to feel better in any given moment. So you just ask yourself, what would help right now?
My end. No worries. Yeah, sorry, just to recap for my benefit, I'm sure everyone else heard this, but you condense this down into a pack of playing cards. So there's 52 cards, and they're arranged in suits, right? So on different broad themes.
Yeah, I mean, that's slightly arbitrary, but I thought it would be fun to gather them together in themes. So the spades are all to do with changing your body state. So they're things like going out for a walk, drinking some water, taking a nap, kind of practical things that will have an impact on your physical experience. And then the hearts are to do with connection with other people or with yourself. So that might include practicing mindfulness or reaching out to somebody for social connection, practicing gratitude, stuff like that. Then the diamonds are all about organization and clarity. So they're things like getting stuff out of your head and down on paper so that you can see it more objectively, or thinking of the next right step that you could take that would move you in a direction that feels positive for you.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, the clubs are around emotion and self-expression. So things like writing about your feelings, singing, dancing, making things, and also just noticing your emotional experience and letting it be there rather than trying to tell yourself that you're not allowed to feel what you're feeling.
Yeah. One of the things which I really like is that there's a question that you ask in the instructions. And we talked a little bit in the webinar this morning about ambivalence and being stuck with really big decisions and that sense of paralysis that can come for people not knowing what to do, just that general sense of stuckness. And I really like the question that you ask, which is really simple, which is what would help right now? And could you tell us why that particular question you think is important?
Well, that's the question that I personally find helpful because in all my years of trying to figure out how to be a bit happier and healthier, over that time, I've kind of bought into all sorts of different ideas that I thought would fix me. So I've spent a lot of time looking for some sort of external solution to how I am. And the thing I suppose that's changed since I've got well in the last few years is that I've really learned to check in with myself
Mm-hmm.
and notice my experience, and validate that a bit more. So instead of looking for someone else to tell me who I am, what I need, what label I should have, I'm now much more interested in being curious about my own experience. So like being a scientist of my own experience. So in the work that I do, it feels really important not to tell people what they should do, because I don't know that we can tell anybody else what they should do. I think there are broad themes that are helpful, that we know, that research can tell us that certain things like going outside and being in nature very often can be a positive experience for people. But whether it would be a positive experience for a particular person at a particular time, who knows?
Mm.
You can't really tell what any one person will need in any given moment. The only person who can tell that is the person themselves. So I'm interested in things that encourage self-awareness and kind of trust in your own experience. And the fact is, our experience changes from moment to moment. So that's why I ask what would help right now.
Mm-hmm.
But also, one of the things that happens for me is that when I'm facing a big decision, or when I'm in a difficult place, I tend to imagine that I need something really big to solve the problem. So I think I need a big, amazing solution to whatever I'm experiencing, or I need to find the right answer, and I need to find it in its entirety. And that kind of suits my rather grandiose way of looking at things. I get excited by big ideas. I love the idea that there's a big answer to something, but the reality for me has been that very often when I feel a bit stuck, what helps is a really little thing that
Mm-hmm.
just gets things moving again. And it might be taking a nap, it might be making a cup of tea, it might be just, I don't know, having a cry. And sometimes once you've done that, you can then see the next step to take. But it's like, you can't always see the journey from here to there, but you can often see the journey from this step to the next one.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And we just had a question, which I'll just address, which is how people can get hold of this amazing thing that we're talking about. And there's a couple of things. One is that you've really kindly provided a free PDF of all of the cards, which we've got available to download. So that's for everyone. And also, if people actually want to buy a pack of cards for yourself, you've got a discount for anyone who's doing the Sober Weekender to buy them off you. We did have a question earlier. I realised it's now scrolled past in the chat, which is about sugar cravings. Now, I realize this is going to be maybe outside your area of expertise, though we could probably talk about eating more generally. But just in terms of sugar, sorry, the question was somebody who quit drinking 5 months ago, hasn't drunk for 5 months, and is really experiencing sugar cravings. And the thing which I'd say is that is completely normal. Often what happens when you're drinking more than you want to over a long period of time is actually what it masks is a sweet tooth. And so when you quit drinking, you suddenly become super aware of the sweetness of everything and find yourself craving it. Because actually, along with all of the alcohol that you've been drinking, particularly if you drink quick, easy to drink drinks like white wine, you've actually been consuming a vast amount of sugar. So when you quit the alcohol, suddenly sugar cravings come out of nowhere, and they do take a little time to subside. They do ebb away. And healthy eating tips, this is a really kind of big thing for people. Have you got any wisdom on this? Because for me, I have to say, mindful eating is I love food. I love food more than it loves me. We don't have a reciprocal relationship. Have you got any kind of, helping people kind of dealing with those kinds of simple, basic challenges about eating well?
Well, I definitely don't have any expertise in the subject of nutrition, but what I observed, just that question of sugar cravings, what I've noticed, I don't know if anyone else finds this, but very often I'll get to a point in the afternoon when my energy kind of sags a bit. And that's very often when I find myself wondering why I don't have any chocolate in the house and whether it's worth going out for it. But what I've learned through this process of kind of checking in and noticing more and more is that often I'm tired.
Mm.
Often I really crave sugar when I'm sleepy. And so I've now got in the habit of, if I notice that happening, I'm a keen napper. So I grew up with two parents who napped in the afternoon, and I thought it was the most embarrassing thing in the world. I thought it was such a, I didn't think that was a cool thing at all. And actually, I really like curling up on the sofa for 10 minutes, and it's like a complete reboot, I find. But often if I do that, when I get up again, I don't have the sugar craving quite so badly. I realized my body was just a bit weary. So I don't know if anyone else has that, but that's that's just one thing I find.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very true, and I think that's true if you know if somebody on this weekend is changing their drinking longer term, either by cutting down a lot or by going alcohol free, you will also experience cravings for alcohol. You know, that's just a good. So you just very patiently and steadily trained your body to expect certain things in response to certain stimuli. So that just noticing them does help. But you're right, absolutely. Very often a craving for a drink is actually because you're thirsty, and one of the best things that you could do is just have a glass of water. Or you're right, if you're tired, you know, don't eat some dinner, have a nap. A quick question for you: what's the ideal time of length for napping and not waking up tired? Any thoughts on that?
Ooh. Oh, well, I have looked into that a bit actually.
Brilliant.
So, well, there's this thing called the nappuccino. If you're someone who consumes caffeinated drinks, that's one idea that people put forward, which is that if you have a caffeinated drink, say a cup of coffee, immediately before you have a nap, then the caffeine takes a little while to kick in. So you can fall asleep because you're tired, but then the caffeine will naturally help you come out of it
Hmm.
before you go too deeply asleep. I don't know. I guess I'm quite lucky in that I can literally catnap. I can lie down, fall asleep, wake up 10 minutes later and just get on with my day. But I know it's very different for people. But I think shorter than about 20 minutes is supposed to be good
Mm-hmm.
if you don't want to have that. I can't remember what they call it, but if you sleep too deeply, you can feel really dreadful when you're trying to wake up again, can't you? If you sleep for, I don't know, an hour or so and you go into a really deep sleep cycle. So it doesn't always work.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you can keep it quite short, it can be. For me, it's just like turning off and on again. It's similar to my computer. It just seems to help.
Yeah, and you're right as well. You know, if it works for you, and I really like this about your approach generally, which is to be curious about your experience, be curious about all of these well-being techniques, and do the stuff which helps, and don't do the stuff which doesn't. That seems to be so common sense, but that's amazing that that kind of simplicity eludes people, and we kind of end up plugging away at things which don't really work. So I wondered what we might do is we might play a little game with your cards, which is that I'm going to choose some just because I want to give people a kind of a broad sense of, you know, over the rest of this weekend, you know, it's what now, 20 past 2 in the afternoon, still some time to go towards the end of Monday. If you want a little boost for your well-being, I want to maybe give people 5 or 6 things that they could do. So I'm just going to choose some cards at random and then we can chat about them. This is like your worst exam nightmare come true.
Yes.
Okay, so our first card is the King of Clubs, which is try something you've never done before.
Aha.
I love the picture of the person in the canoe. That really appeals to my outdoorsy sense. But how does that help improve your well-being? That idea of trying something you've never done before.
Well, it's very close to another card, which is go out of your comfort zone. But there's something about stretching our sense of identity, like exploring different ways of being, allowing ourselves to experiment with being different people, if you like. That can be great for building self-confidence and self-efficacy. So having a kind of openness to experience and a curiosity tends to be associated with people feeling a little bit better. Only you can tell what kind of stretch in terms of your experience and your comfort zone is going to be a good fit for you. So, you know, at one time you might feel super adventurous, and you might be able to do something that's a long way from what you've done before and benefit from that. And another time, you know, if you've been feeling a bit low and a bit vulnerable, even doing a tiny thing that you've never done before, like taking a different route to the shop and simply paying attention to that experience and being present in the moment as you do it, might bring a benefit which looks small, but who cares really, you know, if it's a benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know from my own experience. So I am a bit of an outdoor adventurer type. I fit the bill. And yeah, but I haven't always been that way. And I remember my first experience of being out walking all day. and the first time that I slept out at night felt like such a big deal. And they are really ordinary now, as I've kind of experimented with that way of being. I don't think twice about it. But I remind myself that the first time I did this was a big thing for me. But you do build the life that you imagine is made up of lots of little choices and positive steps in the right direction, isn't it? It's not a big leap to a conclusion. It's about making little changes, which is good.
And it definitely helps to remember that we're kind of plastic in terms of our abilities and our identity. Like we're capable of enormous change. And so doing things that help us to see ourselves differently and develop new skills and have new experiences is just, I think, just kind of generally a helpful thing to remember. So when I was in the process of recovering from decades of poor mental health, I actually applied to join the fire service. And I did all the tests. I did that thing of having to climb up a ladder and hang off it backwards and things that I never thought I would do, simply because I wanted to prove to myself that I could do things I never thought possible. So unfortunately, I got an ankle injury, so I had to put that on hold, and then I ended up starting Little Challenges instead. So that's why I'm here today rather than working for the fire service.
I have to say the fire service's loss is our gain. So I am I'm quite happy about your bust ankle. If you don't mind me saying, right, let's choose another card, which is this. And this is a good one, I think, for the afternoon. Enjoy a hot drink. Tell us about that.
Well, I've got a theory, which is that one of the most helpful things we can do for ourselves and other people when we or they aren't feeling great, which is just, a cup of tea or the equivalent is a very powerful tool in terms of comfort and being with. For example, if someone's having a really hard time and you just offer them a hot drink and you just sit with them, it can go a very, very long way to making them feel better. And so I often find for myself that if I can do that for myself as a kind gesture, it can help. And I developed a strange writing process when I was recovering a few years ago. And I was actually 4 years ago yesterday, I ended up on a secure psychiatric ward. I was really, really very poorly.
Wow.
And when I came out of the hospital, I was really struggling. For a long time, I was really struggling. So I had attempted suicide. That's why I ended up in hospital. And when I came out, I desperately wanted everything to be better, but the reality was that I was still feeling really dreadful. And also my life had got a lot more complicated because of what I'd done. And I felt really, really kind of ashamed of myself. And I didn't know how to make my way back to any kind of normal. And kind of in the depths of being really, really despondent, I started writing. I sat down at my computer one day and I started writing essentially to myself. I didn't realize what I was doing, but I would write down, I don't know what to do. I feel so unhappy. And then I would write back to myself as if another person writing to me. And this other person was always kind and always supportive and always said those really nice things that we tend to say to our friends when they're unhappy, but can be really hard to say to ourselves when we're unhappy. So I got into this habit of writing. And one of the most helpful things that this other me would say when we were writing to each other was, if I was all kind of knotted up with anxiety and trying to figure out what to do, very often it would say to me, are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Do you need to make a cup of tea? And then we'll figure out what to do. And so the cup of tea for me, even though I'm not a big tea drinker, but it came to represent self-care, really.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think you're remarkable, by the way, and so thank you for the fact that you've turned your journey of recovery into a gift to others. I think is an amazing thing. So that's why I'm just delighted that we're having this conversation. A quick, very practical question, which is just about using the cards in practice, which is. Do you choose one at random, or do you look through and find something that seems to suit the moment? What's your kind of preference?
Well, you know, true to form, I would say do exactly what you feel like. Use them any way you want, because I think that's the important bit. So if you have a hunch about how you want to use them that way. I tend to just kind of leaf through them, maybe kind of have them all shuffled up so that you don't know what's going to come next, and then just look at them. When I was developing them and they were still, you know, my really dreadful drawings on index cards, one day my son came in and he was feeling really fed up and really poorly because he just had flu and he was miserable. And I tentatively said, would you like to just try using these to see if anything helps? And so he looked through them and he just leafed through and he put them into two piles.
Yeah.
And one pile was, yeah, this might be helpful. And the other pile was, nah, not now. And it took him just, I don't know, a minute or two to go through and sort them into two piles. And then he looked at the pile of the ones that he thought might be helpful. And I said, do you want to do any of those things? And he said, yeah, all right, in a kind of 15-year-old way. And he went off and did them. And a few minutes later, he said he felt a bit brighter again. And I think there's something about being able to just choose for yourself what you feel like and choose whether or not you want to do it without somebody telling you, that can be quite helpful. So I don't want to tell anybody how to use them, but the way I use them is I muddle them up, I look at them, I think, would this help? If it would help, I'll go and do it. And then either I'm off, you know, I'm good to go, or maybe if I need another prompt, I'll find another card.
And I think one of the other things which my go-to all else fails advice for people who are feeling stuck or ambivalent is just do something, anything. Even something unhelpful is going to be more helpful than doing nothing, because at least you get some momentum back. Even if it's in the wrong direction, you get some momentum back. This is the important thing, to get over the being stuck. So yeah, something better than nothing. Okay, let's talk about this one, because I think this is really pertinent also to the fact that we're living in lockdown, and there's lots that's anxious making in the world right now. But it's the Jack of Diamonds, which is notice what you can and can't control. And I wonder if we could talk about that, because that is, I know, something which is bothering a lot of people right now, the fact that there is so much going on in the world which is so far beyond our control, and how this attitude helps, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's probably one of the things that helped me personally more than anything else in the process of trying to get well, because I you know, until I was about 42, I'd got that one completely back to front. So I spent all my time fixating on things that I couldn't control, like other people's reaction to me, and not enough time looking at the things that I could do to help myself. But I mean, it goes way back. If you look at Stoic philosophy, it's right there. People like Epictetus were talking about control, however long ago it was, a very long time ago. And then you've got people like Stephen Covey talking about it, you know, the circle of influence and control. But basically, very often when we're struggling, it's because we're putting time and energy into things that we have no power to influence, and neglecting the things that could be helpful that are actually ours. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of evidence to kind of back up the idea that being able to kind of train yourself to recognize the difference can make a massive, massive change in your state of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the things that I know that that people ask who are, if you are thinking about changing your drinking, and if you're in a relationship with somebody else who drinks, and that business of how do I change if my partner doesn't change? And that can come down to, you know, start at some of the beginning of dealing with that. It's hugely complicated, and I would never presume to say that it's a straightforward thing. It always is tricky, but part of that is recognizing that you can control what you do, and you absolutely cannot control what your partner does. That way madness lies.
Yeah, and actually, I think we often underestimate what happens when we do change something in ourselves, because even if we're doing it purely for our own benefit, people notice. It might take a little while, but people notice. And often it's much more persuasive, I think. If people can see you do things and then they can see a positive change, they can see that you're feeling a bit better, it's more powerful than telling them anything, you know.
Yeah.
being rather than telling is a useful
Yeah.
approach.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. I have another card. We've done quite a lot of club. We haven't had a heart yet. We've got another club. This one, this appeals to me so much. This is the Seven of Clubs. This is have a cry. As I mentioned this morning, for anyone who was on this morning's webinar, I am a big blubber, and I will. I know for myself that if I'm feeling down or stuck or just a bit kind of congested, um, that I will go out of my way to watch a movie which I know will leave me in floods of tears. There is something for me really cathartic about connecting with something bigger than me, you know, the story that's bigger than me, and immersing myself into it, and just the release of having a really good, fat, snotty, messy cry makes me feel enormously better. Yeah. Is there more that you want to say on that? It's just, yeah, it's so simple.
I'm right there with you. People have said to me, which I think is a good question, and I don't quite know. I don't have an answer for it. So for some people, it's really hard to have a cry. They might feel all of that stuff, all of that kind of pent up stuff that feels as if it would be nice to cry it out. But it's easier for some of us than others to cry. I use, you know, I'm a musician, and music works really well for me, so I can kind of choose the right track to help me cry. And films, have you got a favorite film for making you cry?
Anything from Disney or Pixar will work for me.
Brilliant.
Different films, different times, but yeah, all of those.
And there's definitely there's lots of evidence that from a physiological point of view, it can be really healthy for us to do that. I can't remember all of the details right now, but something I should say is that along with the PDF that I've supplied with all of these cards on it that you're welcome to have, there's also a free website, and you can find out more information about all of the cards. So I don't have all of the research kind of on the tip of my tongue, but you can find loads and loads of research and articles and videos and stuff on there if you'd like to know more about the thinking behind any of them.
Yeah, and it's a fantastic resource that we'd really encourage people to dive into. One of the, I mean, just, and this is part of the reason that you're here as well, is that, you know, in Club Soda, we have some expertise in helping people change their drinking. We know a bit about mindfulness, and we are fascinated about lots of things. And one of the things that we're fascinated by is how people can improve their well-being and some of the evidence around behavior change. And this is, you know, so this is a perfect thing because you get to come and share your expertise with people, and we get to do some good stuff. Okay, I'm actually going to go out of my way to find a heart so we can talk about one. Oh, this is a good one in the context of what we were just saying about mindfulness potentially, which is the Queen of Hearts. Watch your thoughts go by. And I wonder if you could talk a little about that.
Well, there is also a mindfulness card, but not everybody likes the concept of mindfulness or meditation. And I like this card because, you know, we all have thoughts all of the time, which are beyond our control. They come up so quickly and move so quickly. It's very hard to do anything much with them. You can train yourself to think differently, but in the moment, thoughts are constantly bubbling up, aren't they? Like faster than you can manage. And I guess it's that curiosity thing, it's that detachment thing that we were talking about before. Anything that creates a bit of separation between you and what you're experiencing can be really helpful, I think. Because in my life, at least, the times that I've struggled most have been when I've been really kind of entangled with my feelings and my thinking, and I can't get any distance from them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, yeah,
And those are
absolutely.
the times when I found it hardest to control my behavior. So I might be feeling so emotional, so upset or frightened or whatever it might be, that I feel like the only thing I can do is take action. And that action wasn't always helpful and sometimes caused me more problems in the long term. So learning to recognize that the thoughts are always there, and that in and of themselves, they don't do very much. I mean, they might generate uncomfortable feelings, but the thoughts themselves don't do much.
Mm.
It's what we do in response to the thoughts that can have consequences. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And you know, in my own experience, as I talked a bit about depression this morning, my experiences with depression during my 20s and 30s, I continue to wrestle with anxiety. And one of the things which I've learned to do, I'm learning to do, is, you know, it's a continual practice, is to be less reactive and less impulsive in response to anxious thoughts. To recognize that they are just thoughts, that they will pass. They might be intensely uncomfortable in the moment. I might need to distract myself from that discomfort for a little while by doing something positive, but the thought itself does pass. And it now, I know that that's the dynamic that's going on. Always, always better to let the thought pass and come back to the action if it still feels important when the emotional has subsided, rather than act impulsively in the moment. Because very often for me, that impulsion in response to anxiety comes out aggressively, and you know, because I'm trying to make everything, you know, it comes out with it comes from a very bad place in me. So actually letting the thought go and watching it pass and remembering that it's not me, it's a thing which I'm experiencing in this moment, but it's not who I am. You know, this thought isn't me, it's something which is experiencing. There's this really lovely it was the Christian mystic Thomas Merton, who talked about thoughts being like birds flying over our heads. And he said, you can't stop the birds flying over your head, but you can stop them nesting in your hair. And I think that's a really lovely kind of way of thinking about that. So there are two in this pack of cards, and we've done 5 of them. There are 52 ideas altogether. Actually, there are not. There are 54 ideas. 55, because you've got Joker and bonus cards as well. But they're all in the PDF. So we've only covered a few. There are lots. You know, as you say, choose one at random. Choose ones which you think might work for you. You know, if you need a well-being boost, this is what this resource is for. But I want to talk to you specifically about the Joker cards because I find them really intriguing, which is say no to something and say yes to something. And I wonder if you could talk about the power of saying yes and no and why that helps us.
Well, they're kind of connected, aren't they? And it was a big revelation to me when as someone who likes to please people, I'm not very good at it, but I do like the idea of pleasing people. And so I used to say yes to people all of the time. If somebody said, Katie, will you help me with this? Will you do that? I would say yes. I found it very difficult to say no. And it was a really powerful concept for me when I discovered that every time I say yes to something, I am inevitably saying no to other things because I only have so much time and energy. And so every yes is also a no. And now if people ask me to do things, with that awareness, it helps me to make slightly wiser decisions sometimes, rather than just kind of trying to give all of the time and not realizing that sometimes the people closest to me, including myself, are suffering as a result of that. So that for me, that's something about saying yes. What about you? What's your relationship with saying yes?
I find it so easy to say yes. I get myself in trouble because I say yes, and I do that classic people pleasing, say yes, over committed. And I have, you know, in my life, I noticed going through this cycle of massively over committing to things, reaching a point where I can't cope, dropping everything overnight because I'm, you know, like burning bridges and cutting things off and, you know, actually doing some damage in that process. And then waking up the next morning and going, what am I going to do with all this time? And then starting the process of saying yes again, you know, just being in that constant boom and bust of, you know. And so a thing which I've learned is that it's okay to revise those impulsive yeses, and that people are surprisingly open when you go and say, I've been giving it more thought. And the thing which I've realized now is, and starting a conversation about changing your mind where you have overcommitted yourself. And people are remarkably receptive to that, because I think we recognize that impulse to make other people happy and each other. And so we know what it's like when, you know, you've overstretched yourself and done too much. Yeah. So for me, it's been less about learning to say no, um, kind of consciously and actively saying, I'm not going to do that. Although occasionally I found that really helpful and empowering, just to come to a point of clarity for myself to say, I'm not going to do that. That's been really helpful. But then it's been much more about pulling back from those times where I say yes, and and not offering it, and just letting it be. Not being non-committal is a really powerful tool, I find, in relationship. It's just I need to think about that. It's really
Yeah,
useful.
it's great to have some rules for yourself around how you make decisions, I
Mm.
would say. And also, for those of us who find it hard to say no, I did collect some things and put them on the website that I was just mentioning. If you want some really nice, gentle, elegant ways to say no that don't sound like, you know, because often we imagine that saying no is going to come across really badly and people will judge us for it. But there are ways of saying no, as you say, that can make the whole thing a bit, that can actually bring you closer to somebody rather than closing a door between you. The other thing about having yes and no cards is that I have a theory, which is that generally, generally speaking, people know more than they know that they know. so, so I think we have a whole body of knowing within us that we can't always access, but you can sometimes kind of trick yourself into knowing the answer. So like that thing where you toss a coin, you've got a decision, you genuinely can't think what to decide. So you say, okay, I'll toss a coin. You toss the coin, it gives you an answer. And if when you get the answer, you find yourself going, oh, it's told you something useful.
Yeah,
So very often we have like embodied knowledge. You will find that you have some kind of physical response that tells you how you feel deep down, like you suddenly feel tired or energized or a bit miserable, or you find yourself wanting to distract yourself because you're uncomfortable. uh, I think it's easy for us to imagine that we can think our way to information all of the time, that that's our primary tool for knowing. And I think there are all kinds of different ways that we can know. So sometimes just having those cards and, you know, just picking that card and thinking, do I want to say yes or no to it? You'll have a kind of gut response, which often is useful information.
yeah, absolutely. And that's so true, particularly, you know, so at the moment everyone is obviously stuck at home, but there will come a time when we're back out in the world again. And if you've changed your drinking, you'll find yourself in social situations. Where you might feel like you want to drink but aren't sure whether you want to, and actually just being able to putting the time in now to build some skills around tuning into your intuition, your gut sense of being in the world, about your yeses and nos, and kind of paying attention to those. It's amazing the number of people who have got drunk rather than leave a party that they're not enjoying, because they weren't paying attention to the fact, I want to go home. I just want to go home, and knowing that that's okay. That's an entirely legitimate thing to do. Katie, this has been so brilliant, so helpful. I wonder, you've got some stuff going on right now, and I wondered if you wanted to tell people about that and other ways that they can connect with you and other bits of projects that you're running.
Thank you. Yes, well, the main thing that I've been doing since the lockdown began is holding daily, very small group conversations on Zoom. So there are never more than 6 people in a conversation, and they're completely free. And there have been people from all around the world taking part, talking about what it's like to be human and the things that we struggle with, and the things that delight us, and the things that help, and the things that don't. Um, and my intention is just to offer a kind of safe space where you can show up and be how you are without having to pretend to be anything other than that. So I do those every day, and if anybody would like to come and chat, you're really welcome. There's one every single day. I'm about to do my 43rd one a little bit later on this afternoon. And I find them a really rich source of connection with other people, and also just, it helps me to remember that that, you know, life gets messy sometimes, but with a bit of gentleness and a bit of kindness and a bit of companionship, we can make it that bit easier for ourselves. So that's the main thing I'm doing just now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been in a couple of those conversations, and I have to say, for me, they have been, when I look back about the weeks in which they happened, they were a highlight of those weeks. There were such rich, interesting conversations. It's I mean, you host them brilliantly, I have to say. It feels like a not daunting thing to find yourself in conversation with five complete strangers, but you hold them really beautifully, I have to say. And I found, you know, listening to other people's experiences and having the space to share my own in that small group really works for me. Quick question.
I just completely lost sound for a moment, but I'm going to say yes, it is on the website, because I think that's what you asked me. So yes, if you look on my website at Little Connections, you can sign up for the calls there.
Brilliant. Katie, thank you so much for this conversation. It has been fantastic. Such a rich resource. Just a reminder, people, that the PDF is of all of the cards is available to download on the page where you found the link for this webinar, and where we'll put the recording in about an hour's time as well. Use them. Find ways to bring some happiness, and as you say, into the making sense of the messy business of being a human. Katie, thanks so much for your time. Really enjoyed our conversation.
So Vi, thank you so much for inviting me.
No problem at all. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.